But needless to say, we respect the fact that we have a very ardent audience here. And I would like to personally give you a big round of applause for actually being here and attentively listening and contributing to the discussions as well. As you can see, it is the first edition which is dedicated to your fraternity wholly and solely. And we have our partners who have helped us in this cause. And we have a fabulous lineup of panelists who are with us in the first two panels, as well as I am extremely humbled to have all of you here. So thank you very much, our eminent panelists, for taking time out. I'll just take about, a minute to give a little bit of context. If you look at the topic today, it's building a future-ready cloud strategy. And, with Dun & Bradstreet, I've got the good blessing of sharing FaceTime with leaders who are co-pilots to the CEOs. Whether they are from the finance fraternity or from the IT fraternity, we just realize that everyone has to co-pilot with the CEO. And in the bargain, sometimes in the conversations, we realize that, most of them, especially the IT leaders, have said that the clients use cloud as their stepping stone for transformation. And the priority is to move services to cloud as quickly as possible. Now, as much as this sounds good, and it's one step towards modernization, but it needs an enterprise to rationalize and modernize applications and networks, review enterprise architecture, address data sovereignty and usability, strengthen security, reimagine disaster recovery, figure out the right landing zones on cloud, and develop the required foundation capabilities to process re-engineering and talent upskilling. Oh my God, I am sweating right now, because if that's your agenda, dear panelists, and our esteemed audiences, then I can just imagine the burden that you're holding on your shoulders, or you're carrying on your shoulders. Now, in addition to that, the other responsibility is getting the buy-in of all the stakeholders. So it's very important that when we look at this panel discussion, we want to know the viewpoints of our esteemed panelists on this front, because if you have to get everyone on the same page to show them that this business is definitely up for competitive growth and a bright future, what is it that we would need to do? So with this context, which was about a little bit more than a minute, but I wanted to just make sure that we emphasize on the fact that this discussion is very important in today's times. So without further ado, I would like to start with the first track for this discussion, which focuses more on strategic alignment and optimization. And my first question is to Mr. Buland, that in what ways organizations can ensure that their cloud strategies are aligned with their overall business objectives and goals? And could you kind of just give us some view on, the increasing need for companies to rely on cloud? And for that purpose, how do they pick and choose to make sure that the total cost of ownership, which vests with leaders such as yourself, is also taken care of and is in line with the business goals, sir?
Hello. Yeah, Naina, I think that's a great question and very close to my heart, because I would like to start with a personal incident, basically. So I was I was the chief architect for one of the engagement for IT digital transformation, and we had a fantastic solution, right? Technology solution. And when we presented it to the stakeholders, especially the CEO, right, we had listed all the technology benefits, right? This is going to give you all the technology benefits of what you want, right? But that was not the case. I mean, it did not go well. Reason being, the CEO was looking at something else. The CEO actually asked us, what is the business benefit for me? What's in for my user? What's in for my business, right? So I think that is what we as technologists should focus on when we create a cloud strategy. First is we need to define the GNOs, like we do for ourselves, very clearly. What are the goals and objectives which we want to achieve through this cloud strategy, right? Is it, are we going to increase the growth for the business? Are we looking at enhancing the performance of the business? Are we looking at the cost reduction for the business? Or are we looking at some other metrics, right? Or KPIs. It could be improving the user efficiency, for example, right? Second thing which I believe we should be doing more often is to engage with different stakeholders within the organization, right? When it comes to cloud strategy, many a times we take it for granted that the technology or the IT team is going to drive the cloud strategy. But that should not be the case. That is where we need to work across the organization with different functions within the organization. It could be business, it could be HR, it could be finance, and actually understand what are their requirements, right? The third could be, as I mentioned, how do we monitor the performance of this cloud that we want to bring in, right? And it could be, again, as I mentioned, right, some of your things like your efficiencies, cost reduction, your user experience and things like that, right? The other important aspect is the decision. So should we build ourselves in-house or should we buy it, right? So that's another important aspect. Many organizations are looking at, and during COVID, right, especially, a lot of organizations kind of accelerated their cloud journey, right? But later on, and they started with cloud-first approach, everything on cloud, right? But is that the right approach? That depends on the organization again, right? But what we are also seeing in the industry now is there is a cloud-smart approach, right? Do I really need to move on to the cloud, right? Or is it necessary for me at this stage to move on to the cloud? I think you rightly asked the question about TCO and ROI, right? So that needs to be really taken care of, because many organizations who moved on to cloud, right, looking at the TCO 3 or 5 years ago, right, they are into a different situation today, right? So how do they manage the overall, how do they do the overall financial management of that? That is also really important, to have that kind of a strategy in place. I think these are some of the strategies or principles I would say the organization can look at, apart from the technology strategy and things like that.
Thank you, Buland. In fact, you touched upon a lot of things. I am very sure whoever are taking notes will probably run out of pages to kind of take that. But, you know, what we've observed is that return on investment, as much as it's very, very important, and you know exactly what to do, sometimes not including things is a bigger, you know, you have to pay a bigger price. As they say, return on, you know, not looking at return on investment could be lethal, but could not be very good for business, but the return on ignorance is a bigger price to pay, where it is very lethal. So my next question is to Mr. Shubhendu Dutta, where, you know, when we look at return on investment and return on ignorance, there could be a couple of key matrices and KPIs that organizations would need to track to assess the effectiveness of the cloud initiatives. And of course, this could be as a follow-up to what Buland said, that would be very helpful for us, sir. But before that, sir, I would like to invite Mr. Sanjay Jaiswal, who's come. Sir, can you please come and join us?
Yeah.
Yes,
so
Mr. Dutta.
That completes the quorum now. So, yeah, I'll just take a cue from where Buland left, and I want to just ponder over, you know, how the cloud technologies has evolved over the years. So the question was related to strategy, cloud strategy, and it is important to understand two important things. One is that the cloud technology per se is almost a decade and a half old phenomenon, right? We all know started somewhere around, you know, 2005, 6, or, you know, late 2010 around. So we are in the middle of this, you know, decade now. Having said that, in last 15 years, various organizations have adopted in various ways. Now, we being part of the developing world, we have followed what others have done in the West. And therefore, we are treading this path very cautiously, looking at how they have been able to make best use of technology, cloud technology, and then we are adopting in a selective manner. The most scary news that I, you know, read very recently, and that says about cloud, is that nearly 50% of the organizations who had adopted cloud in last a decade or so are thinking about moving back to on-premise. Okay, this is little concerning for all of us. Why is it so? And when we look into this particular issue, what comes to my mind is about cloud strategy, the importance of having a cloud strategy. Why people decide all of a sudden that this is not a good choice? Mainly because while making this choice that they have to move into cloud, probably they just simply rode the bandwagon that everyone is moving to cloud, so we also need to move the cloud. So, which means that probably a right cloud strategy was not in place. So therefore the moot question that comes to my mind is that, why should a company be moving their workload into cloud? And that every organization, every CIO, every CEO also has to ponder that what is that driver for us, which should be, basically which should be a motivation for us to move to cloud. So the recent trend has now emerged that everyone is looking for cloud strategy. Do we have a cloud strategy or not? Even some of the regulators are also asking, do we have a cloud strategy or not? Why? Because of the obvious reasons that we should have a compelling reason to move on to the cloud. Now, compelling reasons, as Buland has also said, is the expected benefits, and those expected benefits must be translated in terms of KPIs that you rightly pointed out, and there has to be a tracking mechanism which can give us a structure that are we on track or not as against our stated goals. So therefore, the role of strategy becomes very important from a cloud perspective. Now, coming on to the details of cloud strategy. Now, being a practitioner, probably I will share my experience, couple of things. Maybe I don't know it's good or bad, but that is what we follow in general. So when we talk about strategies, basically it is about alignment with the business, right? That is what strategy is. So IT strategy in isolation doesn't exist, we all know, right? It is an offshoot of business strategy. So the business has to understand their strategy, and they should understand where the market is growing, and from there the technology team has to derive their own cloud strategy. And that should encompass, in my view, is in terms of number one, the kind of cost saving that they are expecting. Number two could be, now when we talk about cost saving, it is not just the immediate cost saving, but we talk about TCO, total cost of ownership. Maybe we can define the time frame, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years down the line. Second would be the business may have a plan either to have their own computing facility, either own data center or not. That is also a deciding factor how you plan your strategy. Third most important part is your security or your risk appetite, I would say. Every organization has got their own risk appetite. And it is important to acknowledge this fact that when we are moving into cloud, we are actually giving our control to others, right? So which basically is a kind of an outsourcing, I would say. And like any other outsourcing, there is an inherent risk. And every organization has a different risk appetite for this particular risk. A financial organization, a BFSI sector will have a different kind of risk appetite than a manufacturing or for that matter an SME kind of thing. So that risk appetite should form part of the risk of the overall cloud strategy. So a cloud strategy should be comprehensive enough in terms of how do you want to take your business for next 3 years or 5 years, and how this will be aligning to the technological inputs in terms of compute resources. Do you have the capability or not? And it is also related to your AI strategy, because nowadays there is a trend that cloud and AI are going together because it requires a huge computing capacity, and not every organization has it in-house. You ought to have it on cloud. So these are the inputs from a strategy point of view. On KPI side, I will just add a couple of points. TCO has already been discussed. KPIs for cloud should not only cover the expected benefits in terms of TCO, flexibility, then the other points like, productivity of your own people, because when you are moving into cloud, which means your development work will also move into cloud. So the productivity of development team is expected to increase. So that these 3-4 things which are primarily around benefit should form part of KPI. But along with that, I will also stress that your risk score should also be part of KPI. Because risk score will tell us that what is your exposure level when you are adopting cloud. So that you can keep track of this and make sure that that risk score is within your risk appetite. Then only you can, actually make best use of cloud, and you will find less instances of, reversing that trend of moving back. So this is my few points.
Wow, you've actually given a full-fledged, ready-made strategy, Shubhendu, and I'm very sure that this is a lot of information to digest, but if you put it in points, it will definitely help you to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate what you're doing. So thank you very much. Now, since you've talked about the KPIs and you've talked about the strategy as well, my next question is to Tejas, where, we're looking at a lot of companies who are happy to go on the cloud, but at the end of the day, balancing data sovereignty and compliance with cloud benefits is the biggest, I would say, I would say it's the elephant in the room for many of the companies, especially in the BFSI sector or those who deal with sensitive data. So my question to you is, how can organizations effectively comply with data sovereignty regulations in various regions while maximizing the benefits of cloud computing, given the increasing complexity of data residency requirements and the global expansion of business operations? Tejas, we would love to hear from you.
Good evening, everyone. I have been part of BFSI for more than a decade. So I know how does the data resides within country or outside country. So obviously there are a lot of more regulations for BFSI wherein the data should not go beyond the boundaries and it should be reside within our zone-wise availabilities. So obviously that is one thing which we need to take care basis to the industries wherein you are residing. For example, currently I am being manufacturing thing. We do not have any such regulations wherein data has to be reside only in India. We can probably have hosted anywhere else, but obviously now the new things like DPTP Act which is coming in picture, that will gradually will give us more guidelines that what all things has to be in place. But as a clear guidelines based on the industries and based on the regulation which has been told, we need to ensure that the data which is transferred within the, you can say, boundaries are well in place. Second thing is not even the own appliance. We also purchase SaaS-based applications. So for example, let's say we have purchase any product. So they also need to ensure, we also do a audit compliance saying that where is your data hosted, where is your application hosted. So even that compliance comes in picture wherein you need to ensure that if they are hosted on clouds like Oracle, Azure, whether they are within the India boundaries or whether some companies like which are hosted outside India, so are they eligible to provide data? So various things will come in picture basis to the criteria which the organization or the industry vertical which the regulation gives them to comply. So I think that would be base thing.
So the grid is just getting more and more complex by the day for all of you, and I'm very sure you will find solutions to it. But as I heard some of the things that you just said, Tejas, it means, the scanning the horizon right now is just not possible because it's too cloudy. So yeah, we're just hoping that the cloud strategy is kind of put in place before the DPTP Act comes into its being. And a similar question to you, Sanjay, how can organizations effectively comply with data sovereignty, and how do companies actually balance data sovereignty compliance with your cloud benefits? It would be happy to hear your views.
Okay, so from my perspective, it's completely depend upon the company and the organization strategies and the complexity of the organization. if it is completely like a single location based, so it will be a bit easy for targeting and focus on specific rules and the regulations from the regulator perspective. If it is multinational companies, so they have to follow like all the regulations. So if it is multinational company, then we have GDPR for the Europe, then CCPA for USA, then other regulation for China and the Singapore. So for having regulations at cloud level for each and every continent or the country and for the regulators differently, it's really a big task. So it cannot be managed at the single-handedly. You require a team as well for managing them. So you should have a strong strategy at that point of time for managing the data localizations from the regulation perspective. At the same time, there are few controls which are kind of like a common controls you can put up across, like maybe you can offer a DPDPA for India or a GDPR. So kind of like you can work out on minimization, data minimization. So you can just collect the data, whatever it is required for you. At the same time, like put up the strong control on the access to the cloud where you are storing the data. And accordingly, like you can put another controls from the data flow perspective, file integrity monitorings. So we have a few security controls which we can implement to control the data, not from the regulator perspective, but to safeguard from the getting the penalty and getting the breaches.
Thank you, thank you. But what crosses my mind now is if we put too much of controls on this, then the basic essence of having the cloud would be questioned, right? So that's probably another problem to grapple. Maybe in the next panel, when all of us meet, we'll probably say that, okay, fine, the controls are in place, but what do we do with the limitations of access? But moving to the next question, again, I would like to ask Tejas that distributed cloud architectures is gaining a lot of popularity. And if companies are really looking at using this then, or considering this, while transitioning to a distributed cloud model, what are the key aspects they will need to keep in mind while doing so?
So going with my the personal experience, so in my past organization, we started deploying couple of our application on the cloud, saying that we will go initially by UAT and then development and then production. So, and we started. So it was obviously a strategy wherein we will go gradually and we will do it. But then obviously this is during COVID time wherein everything was stopped, business was hampering. So again, then it was been decided that we will come back, we'll go to the on-prem. So that is one issue wherein multi-cloud as of now does not come in picture. But second thing is, let's say there is an incident. For example, you have on-prem data center and there is some incident. So I'm talking about, let's say, a small and medium enterprise, wherein an incident happens and, for example, a UPS issue and your 2 hours your business is down. So in that case, obviously, then a strategy which, as a past organization, we followed that we should go on the cloud so that there is no dependency on the local. So that is one thing wherein a single cloud initially will come in picture. Once you stabilize, saying that your, let's say 80-90% of the application is on cloud, then obviously the second factor will come in again, then billing issues, then a single dependency on the single service provider, cloud service provider, saying that we do not have any other options wherein we can host anywhere else. So in that case, again, let's say once you stabilize maybe over a period of 1 year or 2 years, then you can start exploring the option of multi-cloud. And then wherein you can start migrating the existing application or else the new application which is supposed to be planned as a project, and then we can have multi-cloud option wherein both the cloud costing services and the partners are being compared, so that there is no single dependency on single service provider, and obviously both will have their competitive edge, saying that if we do not give a proper service or if there is any issue in SLA, so they will switch back to the, for example, AWS to Azure or something like that, because they will be already aware that they are already using multi-cloud. If the existing partner is already aware that we are already in single service provider, then they do not have any risk. So obviously that is one of the factor wherein the multi-cloud will come in picture, and then the multiple application can be hosted on the multiple sites.
Thanks, Tejas, because you've clearly said that, distributed cloud offers potential for increased flexibility and scalability. But now I would like to hear Buland's point of view that if it gives you flexibility and scalability, I'm very sure with that comes a couple of challenges in terms of governance and management. So if I have to ask you, how can organizations effectively manage their distributed cloud environments to ensure consistency, compliance, and security across multiple locations? What is it that you would kind of advise them? And of course, if you could highlight a couple of challenges, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think, so Tejas already kind of briefed that different type of organizations will have different reasons to move on to multi-cloud, right? The most common thing that we are observing is, different cloud providers are providing different capabilities, right? So different capabilities on software as a service, platform, infrastructure as a service. We are seeing a lot of proliferation of AI, right? Every cloud provider is now kind of providing some of the other AI services, analytics, industry use cases, industry-specific use cases. We are also hearing the terminology of industry cloud a lot, right? But the challenge is, how do you manage this distributed multi-cloud of environment? I think the most important thing that organizations should look at is some kind of a unified cloud management platform, right? Which kind of provides them a single pane of glass through which they can manage workloads across different cloud. The other challenge which we generally see in these kind of scenarios is inconsistency across workloads. So for example, there is a lot of version drift across different environments, right? So the same operating system for a DC and DR workload might have different patches and things like that. So how do you bring in automation to do some of this stuff? How do you leverage some of the infrastructure as a code technology, right? How do you bring in automation? How do you do configuration management across these different clouds, right? So these are some of the things that one needs to consider in mind. Bring in DevOps, CI/CD, have a CI/CD culture. Not only DevOps, look at security as the other aspect, I think, which is one of the other part of the question, right? So I think, I'm sure prior to this session, there was a detailed panel discussion on security, but I would quickly touch upon that organization should also look at something called as a zero trust framework, right? They should look at data encryption. They should also look at other cloud computing security technologies, like especially in the regulated industry, there's something called as confidential computing or homomorphic computing, right? Encryption. So they should look at that. And I think apart from that, from a compliance perspective, I think Shubhendu and Sanjay already spoke about a lot of things on compliance. So compliance management is another important aspect, where how do they audit, track, log some of these things and do it on a continuous basis, right? So these are some of the points that I would say are important for an organization when they are drafting a multi-cloud strategy.
Thank you, Buland. And now, Shubhendu, I really know that the company that you represent and the volumes of data that you manage, any amount of architecture that you set is not enough. So my next question to you is, if you have to look at immediate value versus long-term scalability in the cloud architecture, how can organizations balance the immediate need for business value with the long-term goal for building a scalable, flexible, and adaptable cloud architecture?
Well, architecture is a difficult question because we spend more time in building things rather than planning. So it is important that when there is a need to move to cloud, the first thing is to look at, what are the architectural elements that we need to look at. Priority is, if you look at the, maturity model of cloud, and here I am talking about all the three service delivery models of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and a software as a service model. All three models have got a different level of control that a customer will have on its data. So whenever we are moving certain things on cloud, what we must take into consideration that what is that level of control that I am going to lose over my data. For example, in infrastructure as a service-based model, I will have a better or much higher control on my data as compared to platform as a service, and least amount of control when it becomes a software as a service. So it is, again, I'll come back to that same point about cloud strategy and organizational risk appetite, that how much control I can afford to lose when I move on to cloud. So looking at the maturity level, the first level is when you move into infrastructure as a cloud, our immediate need is to get rid of the computing resources which are required on-premise, which is not sufficient enough to meet your requirement. So for example, an organization who is exiting from his data center, right? He doesn't want to continue with his data center, or he feels that the data center space is not enough to continue for another 2 or 3 years. Then the immediate plan is to move some of the workloads on infrastructure as a service-based model, which is called lift and shift model, we commonly called. So this will help in 2 ways. One is that you still retain the control over the data, although you are using somebody else's infrastructure. And secondly, you maintain the continuity of service. So you have the inherent advantages like elasticity, which comes along with any cloud. The second is the control. So this is lift and shift model, clear, immediate, outcome. If you move up in the ladder, the second step is what you call, lift and automate. So basically you lift, but then you also make use of the best practices or those, native technologies which are offered by the cloud service provider. So that way you can, bring in efficiency in your operations, you can reduce your cost, you can bring in more visibility in your workload, so that you can, deliver better service levels for your business. So that is the second level, where you automate a part of it using the native, cloud technology which are available. Third, I think, people should look at in terms of transforming, bit of transformation, where you are, not touching the application code, but making some changes in the application which are going to impact the business outcomes. So it is like developing security solutions around that, so that you can ensure that nothing unusual is going to happen. You are protecting your workload. So that is the third step, where you are basically re-architecting also to some extent, where some of the applications which were legacy in nature, you do some changes using the DevOps model, okay, and also the latest, automation tools available. So that is the third level what I see. And the fourth, which is the most important, is where you are replacing things, replacing some of the applications itself. Applications which might have outlived its, its utility. So there probably you would like to replace those applications with COTS application, or what you call SaaS applications, software as a service-based model. But that will be the stage where you are fully confident of moving your workload or replacing your workload from the traditional software to the COTS model of SaaS. But that will require a lot of maturity for the organizations, because you need to have a very strong governance to monitor those things, to monitor the, the performance of your service provider, and also to monitor the cost. So these are the, 4 levels which I think, any organization should look at when they plan to re-architect their solutions or move into the cloud for better outcomes and, the improved results.
You've covered most of the aspects, but I would also like to hear from Sanjay that, you come from the BFSI sector, where these things become very important, because you need to have an agile and flexible business considering the sector that you're in. So could you please share your thoughts on this as well, the immediate value versus long-term scalability in cloud architecture that you will have to keep in mind for your organization or for similar organizations such as yourselves?
Okay, so again, like having a complex organization, one should take an approach and have a clear strategy how we can go for a long term, because scalability on a cloud or moving to a cloud, it's not a really easy job to just kind of like I have lifted here and completely making a shift here, kind of like a data center movement. So you have to have a proper strategy, a proper plan and a proper approach. So what I can say that is here is that one should go for a complex organization, kind of like a BFSI or NBFCs, banking. So we should go with the hybrid structure where, or we should have an approach of the hybrid. The reason behind that, everything moving on a cloud, it might be increase my cost. Like if you just take, like if you are moving a database where you are having a more ingress and the egress of a data flow, so it will cost you more than your hosting of a database on the cloud. So such scenarios where you can have a databases on-prem or you can have on your private cloud, and rest of the applications you can move it on a cloud. So it is better to have a hybrid approach. At the same time, we can take a slow approach. So instead of like moving in a bulk, you can take modular services. So you can break the applications into multiple modules, or you can go for the microservices where you can shift application in bits and pieces and run your business with, I will not say like a zero downtime, but with very minimum or minimized downtime. Again, this approach will help you in, as sir says, this will help you in the DevOps process, where you can, it will help you in the CI/CD pipeline. And another point is that when you are moving in the slow pace or a slow approach or in a phase-wise manner, you have the opportunity to, or the visibility of your workload. Because most of the time why organization fails is from they don't have the visibility. They just deploy the EC2 instance or S3 bucket, but they forget to continuously do the monitoring and about the compute system so that they can make the changes on the resources. So if you have a slow pace or a phase-wise manner, so still like whatever the migration you have done on a cloud, you have a chance to make the changes. So if it's impacting a high cost, you can just go for the lower cost. So there are like, even as Shubhendu sir says that you can utilize native services of public cloud service provider. So there are multiple tools available in the marketplaces which we can use, and you can monitor your or you can have the visibility of your resources, and accordingly you can take the decisions to minimize the cost. Also, this will help us in forecasting your TCO or the ROI as well.
Thank you, Sanjay. Now, in the interest of time, and I really want to kind of get into this because this is my favorite part. It's a rapid fire round. And it's a rapid fire round. So you have very little time, but you've got to answer this. We live in an agile and flexible world, right? And every company has to remember that they have to be relevant. And for that, they need to have a flexible business model and move with agility. So the next question, which is more like, and Sanjay, take the mic fast. So it's a rapid fire. And given the rapid evolving nature of cloud computing, what are the 3 key strategies that organizations can employ to ensure the cloud architecture remains adaptable and future-proof? So the first 3 things come to your mind, Sanjay.
Cost optimization or cost augmentations. So that you have to take care. I have to say 3 or only just 1?
3.
3, okay. Second, from the being into the CISO or being the CISO, cyber security controls. What are the controls we can have? And third one will be the best approach what we can take, as I said earlier. Perfect.
Sir, you can repeat, but...
Well, I will agree to all 3, but I will add a couple of more here.
Perfect.
So one is go-to-market, most important for us. Cybersecurity, of course. Second is the service levels, which is important. And third is, cost tracking. So, and I would add one more is our governance, which is very critical.
Perfect. So we've got 4 in the second. Tejas?
So my top 3 would be management approval. Second is OPEX model, not an CAPEX model, because OPEX is very easy to digest to the management. And third would be best cloud partner who will manage for us for the long time.
Wow. Buland, you know, you've got 90% covered, but there's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
10%. There's hope, right?
Sure. Let me try and see. Okay. For me, I think just to add to all of this, interoperability across these different cloud would be one of the things which I can think of. The other thing would be being secure and compliant by design. The third thing, I think everyone today is talking about AI, right? So AI in everything would be the other thing. I would like to add one more thing from a strategy perspective, right? Um, when you draft a cloud strategy, it is very important to have a exit strategy as part of the cloud strategy, right? Many a times we miss that, right? But I mean, off late we are seeing that what's happening is when everyone puts all their eggs in the same basket, right? With some recent acquisition and things like that. So that's one great example in the industry. I think these are some of the things which I would say.
So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, this deserves a big round of applause for all our panelists because I was expecting 3 strategies and there are 4 people here. And this is the first time that I have moderated, but all 3 of them have come with individual line items which are mutually exclusive and which have actually given me 3 into 4. That's 12 lines which are very important for a strategy. First time I've come and truly commendable. I have enjoyed every second of this. And we still have time and I would like some of our audiences to have, we would like to have a Q&A session. So does anyone want to ask any questions to our esteemed panelists? Please feel free to raise your hand. Can we see a hand there and can we please give a mic? Thank you. Ma'am, could you please introduce yourself and then ask your question?
Hi, my name is Vinushree. I am from Kotak Mahindra Bank. So my question to you is, while we leverage cloud strategies into our systems and businesses, how are we making sure that it's sustainable as well as balanced out with the possible climate changes that are happening? That's it. That's my question.
Will anyone want to take?
You can just repeat the question, yeah.
Can you please repeat the question again?
It's not very...
So as we move towards cloud strategy and leveraging the benefits of it for growth in our businesses, how are we making sure that it's sustainable and in balance with the climate change that is happening today?
Great question. So you are referring to a linkage between the cloud adoption, I would say, with the climate change, if I have got ESG, right? In fact, this is something that we were actually discussing before this, before we are here on the dais. And it's a great question, but, we thought this is actually a forward-looking question. We didn't expect this question. But thanks for raising this point. There's a lot of discussion today is happening around ESG, and let me also tell you that today data centers around the globe are on focus on how they are performing on ESG scores. So many of the large tech companies, they have this mandate to represent their performance in terms of their scores. So if you look at the way they are, using electricity for their, compute resources and elsewhere, they are much, much higher, than any other industry. And therefore, I think it will take some time for the industry as a whole to come to that level, because today everyone is focusing on the benefits that cloud would offer without being mindful of the consequences that it is going to cause to the planet at large. But there is what I have understood and what we have read also, that companies like Google, Amazon, and and Apple, they are clearly focusing on this ESG, and there is a very good video also which we saw the Apple has in terms of Mother Earth video. I'm not sure how many of you have seen that video that talks about that they have a plan, KPI around ESG. So every year they review those KPIs around their ESG score, which actually is a forward-looking thing, and I am sure everyone else in the tech industry is going to follow that. So we see, yes, today it is not there, but in coming years it is going to take a hot seat, and everyone would be aware of this fact.
Thank you, Shubhendu, so much. Is there anyone else for one more question? Yes, sir. Can you please introduce yourself and then ask your question?
Hi everyone, my name is Purav Nanavati. I'm a technology consultant at Khaitan & Co. So my quick short question would be, do we have the right talent to manage this upgrades or related to AI or cloud computing, cloud strategy to manage the technological advancements that are coming through?
Sorry, I didn't get your name and company.
Purav Nanavati.
From?
Khaitan & Co. It's a law firm.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, just to update you, we are already a cloud. We are already on cloud, 100% on cloud. And obviously, we have changed multiple partners. So if you see, there is a concept called CSP, Cloud Service Provider. So obviously, in-house talent is one thing wherein you have to groom, you have to ensure that the in-house resource get certified. They keep on updating their skills in multi-cloud. But second thing is you need to ensure that whenever you take on board the CSP partner, they also have to be skills in place wherein they can do multi things like upgrade, DR, BCP, adding of resources, removing of resources. So I think one of the key factor which we also had a face problem is you will, and obviously I think many of them must have faced the problem is the billing issue. For example, some of the component has been added and during restore or during the activities completed, it is not getting revert back. So that is the key issues wherein the CSP partner has to ensure that each and every component has to go back, and then the billing issue comes in. So, and then obviously as a personal experience, we had changed the CSP partner saying that billing issue has come and you are the technical expertise, you should come back to us saying that this is the extra cost you are bearing. So one and the most priority thing is ensuring that you keep on upgrading your employee skills with certification and case studies. And second is choose the best CSP partner, like they have gold partner, silver partner, and then maybe in an interval of 1 year, you keep on adding the SLAs and penalties so that any issues or penalties or any incident comes in, you ensure that they are under the lines of the SLAs. I think that is from my side.
Thank you, Tejas. And now in the interest of time, we are all here, so you can catch up with us and ask your questions. But in the interest of time, I'm just closing the Q&A and just summarizing the panel. A future-proof cloud strategy basically means having a comprehensive approach that anticipates and adopts the evolving needs and technology of businesses. It involves designing the cloud infrastructure and services with resilience in mind to ensure that the long-term relevance and effectiveness of the business persists. Modernizing IT has many moving parts, as we discussed, and it always goes beyond acquiring available and pay-as-you-go infrastructure, which most of the companies look at, especially when it comes to managing costs. Although long-term thinking has always been welcomed by most of the business leaders, bringing clarity, to this idea, to this ideal end state and devising an approach with measurable outcomes is extremely taxing for IT leaders. And therefore, if you look at the word modernizing, whenever you're given an agenda to modernize your business, you need to understand what it basically means to a business. It means enterprises must rationalize and modernize their apps, plus focus on networks, review the enterprise architecture, address data sovereignty and sustainability, and usability, strengthen their security, reimagine disaster recovery, and ensure that all this together is included in your plan in whatever manner you would deem useful. And when you look at people who are planning this strategy, the planner's goal should be to deliver value beyond scalable infrastructure and the promise of lowered total cost ownership. I think somewhere, if you keep these points in mind, it makes a lot of sense for you to be the person in the driver's seat, especially when you're planning out a strategy. And last but not the least, when you look at the end objective and start moving backwards, it should focus on ensuring that you boost the enterprise agility and set a foundation for new business models contributing to the top line growth. So that, my dear friends, is very critical, especially when you plan the cloud strategy. And I think all our esteemed panelists have given their point of view. And as you can see in the rapid fire, these are actual leaders. They kept on running out, and I thought Buland would probably repeat, but he came again with a mutually exclusive answer. And therefore, thank you very much, and a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we will sum our panel discussion. And thank you very much, panelists.